Hey guys, welcome to Thrive Bites Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for listening on. You could have been anywhere in the world and you decided to spend just a few moments of your precious time, and we greatly appreciate it. Here on the podcast, we talk about three things: living a plant-powered lifestyle, enhancing emotional resilience, and creating a thriving mindset. And I interview a range of passionate guests such as physicians, dietitians, coaches, entrepreneurs, and many more. And please join me as I deliver these engaging, informative, and high-valued conversations for you. And just remember, the first 5 seasons of the Thrive Bites podcast can now be found in the Chef Doc app, available in your Apple Store and Google Play stores. So what are you waiting for? Come on inside. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites podcast. I have a wonderful episode for you guys. We're going back to culinary medicine, and I am joined by my friend, Dr. Daniel Chen. He is going to traverse us through his story and walk in his shoes just for moments, and how pivotal and how inspiring and how heartwarming himself is, and how amazing his story and how he translated and transformed that into his current practice. So you don't want to miss this, and I'll see you guys inside. Okay, guys. Well, welcome to another episode of Thrive Bites Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Colin Zhu, and thank you so much for coming on with us. You could have been anywhere in the world, and you decided to spend just a few moments with us, whether it's on the weekdays or your weekends. Either way, we really appreciate it. And for today, we have a wonderful, wonderful guest. I am super, super, super stoked. He is a good friend and colleague. His name is Dr. Daniel Chen. He's a double board certified in internal and lifestyle medicine. He is a primary care clinician practicing in Spanish and also in English. And he is located at Esperanza Health Center in North Philadelphia of US of A. He's trained in Jefferson Medical College and has completed his residency at Temple University Hospital. He's a second-generation Chinese American born, raised in Southern California. I don't know if I knew that. I'm going to have to ask him. He found immense joy in connecting what he does in his own kitchen to everyone around him through a delicious, nutritious, plant-based, and culturally connected approach to food. Fueled by his own experience as a cancer and heart attack survivor, he now leads a continually expanding initiative to implement a multidisciplinary interactive model of food, movement, and behavioral health to support positive lifestyle changes with his patients and working towards health justice. I love it. This guy's already a superhero. You can just see him in his uniform. He's going to get up and do his thing. He's on the medical advisory board at the Colin Campbell Center for Nutrition Studies. He and his wife, Charlene, also a physician, are living out the venture of raising their 2 school-age children plant strong. So without further ado, please welcome Dr. Daniel Chen. Hey, what's going on?
Hi, Colin.
How are we doing today?
Great, great. Thank you for inviting me. I've been looking forward to doing this with you.
Awesome, awesome. Well, it is my great pleasure and privilege to have you here on the show. And it's always wonderful to be able to bring a physician that is so passionate and digs deep and is really just wanting the world to be a better place. And we're doing this as healthfully and as wholesomely as possible. And I can see this amazing, look at this spread. I'm going to change some camera angles around. Look at this. Oh my goodness.
We're going to have fun.
We're going to talk about your story a little bit. And, like I said in the intro, you have a very, very super heroic origin. So I like to take my audience from point A to point B. So you had mentioned that you had survived a heart attack and cancer. Please let us know how that came to be and the different moments through that journey of yours. And I'm really stoked for you to be here. Thank you, by the way. Take us through those moments where they were light bulb moments for you and how those were pivotal for you to arrive to this moment.
Probably we'll start at the beginning. Like you said in my intro, I was born and raised in Southern California. My parents were immigrants from Hong Kong, coming for higher education, looking for the American dream and found the American health crisis. My dad, when he was 44, ended up having open heart surgery. He needed bypass surgery for blocked coronary arteries. He went through his life struggling with diabetes, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. And he ended up passing away not too long after he retired from his work from a massive heart attack. That was a huge part of my, my journey here. And he was also a really insightful, wise man. And he taught me so much. He modeled, one of his mantras was, you always have to use the right tool for the right job. And that's just been applicable everywhere as a life skill, even in medicine, doing procedures. I mean, in the kitchen, I think you only really need two knives, a paring knife and then some kind of chef's or bigger knife, right? To do the bigger stuff. This one is a Chinese vegetable cleaver from my grandmother.
I love it.
But
that's how you know you're in an Asian household, is when you have, a butcher's knife or a cleaver.
Right. It works as your chef's knife and as your what's it called? Bench scraper, all at the same time. And he also taught me and modeled a lot about justice. I have a memory of, as a kid, being in the grocery store in line to check out, and somebody behind us had cut the line, and he went and spoke to this person. They were not interested in lining up like everybody else, and he took our family, because we weren't in any hurry, to the back of the line to make it right for the rest of the people.
Wow.
And that made an impression on me, and probably didn't know it at the time, but that stayed with me. So I moved to Philadelphia to start my medical career. And that was the first time that I had to fend for myself with food. Up until then, even in college, we had amazing dining halls. Someone else was making the food. But now I was on my own in a new city, albeit a great city for food. Philadelphia is a mecca of great restaurants and restaurateurs. And we even have the historic Reading Terminal Market, not too, a few blocks away. It's indoor, giant farmers market. Beautiful food there. But this was the first time that access and finances made a difference. I lived across the street from a fast food burger place. There were hoagie restaurants around. Chinatown was not too far away, but the cheapest things there were buffets of fried, sweetened foods. You get your little bit of rice, and then you could put all these different fried foods on top for a few bucks, right? And that's how you would sustain yourself. Even in med school, lunch talks were the same type of thing. Food that was quick and cheap, a lot of pizza, and that's healthcare people feeding healthcare people, right? So you might see where this is going. About 4 months shy of my 37th birthday, I was practicing physician at that point. We were walking as a family to church. We live about a 7-minute walk from church. At that time, we had 2 kids, or we still have 2 kids, but one was on my shoulder.
I didn't know you were done with them.
Yeah. One was on my shoulders. I was pushing in a stroller, and I started to feel chest pain. Started feeling really tired. I didn't think I could make this short walk. We eventually made it there, got home. I spent the rest of that day lying on the floor, thinking to myself, oh, I just need to work out more. I'm really out of shape. My wife, who is very wise and very caring, looked at me and said, no, that's not normal. And she's like, you need to get checked out. So, doctors don't like to get doctor advice. But I listened. I was in a cardiologist's office the Wednesday after, and he looked at me, he said, you're young, I'll take you seriously, but we'll do some evaluation, some lab work. And I said, you know what, I need to get back to work. Can you do a stress test on me? And he looked at me, he looked at my shoes and he said, can you run in those? I was wearing Crocs. And I was like, look, I can't come back. I have a busy schedule. I need to see my patients. I will run. And he said, okay. He extended me some professional courtesy. He got me a stress test within the hour. It was amazing. And I was running on the treadmill, and the person administering the test called the cardiologist into the room to look at my rhythm strips, the EKG strips. And he looks over at me and goes, Dr. Chen, I can't send you home. I said, what? What's going on? And he called over the interventional cardiologist from the main hospital. And I went from the stress lab to the cath lab, where they shot dye in so they could see the arteries of my heart. And they saw that all three of my main arteries that supply blood flow to the muscle of my heart were significantly blocked. There was tons of plaque there. But that wasn't even the worst part for me. They looked at me and they said, normally for people who have 3 vessel disease, all 3 main arteries blocked, we recommend bypass surgery. But at your age, we would hope that you would actually outlive these grafts, these arterial grafts. But then the alternative is to put stents in, right? These tube scaffolding to open up these blocked arteries. And they said, well, the number of stents we'd have to put in would be many more than what we normally put in somebody who's just had a heart attack. Usually if you know somebody who's had a heart attack, maybe they got 1 or 2 stents put in. They said we'd have to put in many more. And each stent has a 5 to 10% risk of failing. So the more stents we put in, the more chances something's going to go wrong. And they said, now it's up to you to decide. I was like, I don't want that decision, right? I don't want my chest cracked open if I can help it. But I also don't want to go through a bunch of procedures and then have it fail. So they admitted me. The next day, the surgeon came, told me the same thing. And it was still kind of the weight of this decision was on me. So 8 p.m. comes around the next day, and the interventional cardiologists come in. They're the ones who do the stenting. And they said, okay, we're finishing up our last case, and we'll take you next. I said, whoa. Aren't you guys tired? Like, I don't want somebody doing a procedure on me and falling asleep, right? Like, no, this is routine. We can take you, no problem. I said, also, wasn't I supposed to decide like which one I wanted to do? And they're
like, don't I get a choice in this?
Yeah, I didn't want the choice, but now you told me I have a choice, right? And I said, so when's the next time, you can take me? And they said 3 p.m. the next day. I said, I can wait, what is that? 7 hours? No problem. Okay. So they left. They said, okay. But shortly after that, I started feeling nauseous. And then all of a sudden I couldn't hear very well. And I had to lie down and I couldn't see very well. My blood pressure had started to drop. But, being a physician, I was like, oh, let me calculate my mean arterial pressure and check how much circulation I'm getting to my brain. I'm doing fine. But of course, like, it didn't even dawn on me that I can't see, I can't hear. I wasn't getting blood flow to my brain, right? So they did an EKG on me. They saw I was having a heart attack in the hospital. They sent me straight to the cath lab, and they put 2 stents in the artery that was completely blocked off and saved my life. But the interesting thing about that was now I have 2 vessel disease, not 3, right? Because they fixed 1. So now the answer or the guideline was I get stents. So a heart attack helped make the decision for me, is what happened. I ended up with 6 more stents, so 8 stents during this hospitalization. I was in the hospital for 10 days. Part of it was in the intensive care unit with a balloon pump. I learned so much during this hospitalization. The staff and the docs and everyone were fantastic. But I should tell you. So Charlene, my wife, gave me Dr. Caldwell Esselstyn Jr.'s book, Prevent and Reverse Heart Disease, right before I went into the hospital. I was reading it in the cardiologist's waiting room. And I ended up finishing that book during the hospitalization.
Yeah.
And I was like, why didn't anybody teach me this during medical school? Why did I not know this? And I decided that, eating greens and plants and filling my plate with all these colors and nutritious vegetables, fruits, beans, whole grains would be the difference between me continuing to live or not. But that was also more easily said than done, right? I came back from the hospital and really precious, caring friends brought me food. And they were very cognizant of what I was trying to do. So they would make whole food, plant-based meals. They would do it without oil. I think they try to do without salt, without added refined sugars or refined grains. And most of, like, none of my circle, had ever eaten like this before. So they didn't know how to make food like this. I mean, it was okay. It wasn't anything fantastic. I mean, I appreciated it, but it wasn't a dining experience. And I will say for the next year, probably, I was really depressed. I thought that being healthy and trying to survive meant limiting myself, missing out, restriction, starvation. It. And at one point, I even said to Charlene, I said, I don't know if I really want to keep living if I have to live like this. And it was a real low time. And I mean, and that wasn't even the end of my stenting journey. Actually, a year, 2 years after that, I needed an additional stent. And so I thought, how long do I have? My mortality was in question for myself. I said, I don't know how this is going to work, But, there was a point in time where I started to find other people who were doing this. Social media, but also that's kind of when Charlie and I both discovered lifestyle medicine. And we studied, we learned, and we got board certified, opened up a huge world of people who had been doing this for decades, right? And they weren't protein deficient, they weren't malnourished, and they were actually happy eating what they were eating, So it was a kind of a revisit, like going back and being like, it's not just about removing things, right? It's about opening up my world to all the things that I kind of didn't know existed before. The spices, the herbs, we used aromatics, but like how to use them, right? How to sweeten things with things that are naturally sweet, and how to use a variety of plant foods to create layers of flavor, and then techniques to make it taste good. Once that ball started rolling, I was back in kind of my zone, like making food again that was delicious and that I could feel good about. And then, just like I thought to myself, like, why didn't anybody teach me this? I went back to my clinic and said, why isn't anybody teaching my patients? And so it was a matter of like, how do I share this with other people? How do I find and connect with those people who are eager and curious and want this option for hope and healing? Yeah, so now I've been doing for the past a little over 2 years these lifestyle medicine cohorts where I have patients come in, and instead of a 15-minute visit with one clinician, we have 2 hours together to have a relational, not that the 15-minute appointment doesn't have a relational component, but like we have a much more relaxed and connection-based time where we can talk about how lifestyle affects our health and our wellness and our ability to thrive, right? To touch on all 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. I focus a lot in our class on 4 parts. One is a didactic portion, like traditional classroom kind of thing, but also doing behavioral health. So we have a behavioral health team at our office that leads people through goal setting and discovering motivation and anticipating obstacles, and also strategizing as a group, shared journeying together. And then my favorite part is the food demoing. I write a recipe every week with whole food, plant-based ingredients. And we partnered with an organization through grant funding to bring produce boxes. So it's kind of like the show Chopped. You know, you open it up for the week and you say, how can we make this into something amazingly delicious that you can feel good about eating? And so we make it, and people are just astounded. They're like, you know, I've never known that mushrooms could be so good, or that I like tomatoes or eggplants, you know, until I've come here and I've tasted this. And I can do this at home, you know? And one person told me, you know, you've decreased the threshold of risk. Like, I've had doctors give me a list and say, hey, go do this, go eat this, go buy this. But I have my budget for the week. And if I take this and I buy this and I don't know how to prepare it, or I don't know if I'll like it and I mess it up, then it's all over for the whole week. But yet, if I come here and I've seen it done and I've tasted it, and I brought it home to my kids because there were leftovers and they liked it, I can do this. Right? And that's what's exciting. That to actually get it from, I'm just telling you to do something, which probably doesn't work anyway, to let's figure out how this could be meaningful to you, help lower the risk, increase the access, actually make it reality. And then you can, once you start that journey, you see what happens, right? People come back, they're like, I feel so much more energy. My migraines are less often. My blood pressure has dropped. I stopped my diabetes medications. And one guy recently said, I can run a mile now for the first time in my entire life. I feel great. And that perpetuates it, right? And then they share with each other. A part of what we do in our class a lot is dispelling myths, myth busting, right? So we work in a predominantly Spanish-speaking community. And one of the saddest things that I hear is patients come in and say, I've done what you told me to do, meaning, you know, the healthcare community has told me to do. I stopped eating rice. But what ended up happening is they stopped eating rice, they stopped eating beans, and they've done what many of us traditionally have been taught and moved towards the high fat and high protein foods, right? And then they also disconnect from the cultural significance of these foods, right? That mean so much to who they are. And the beauty of this culture to have originally created these dishes to support the well-being and health of that community and that people group, right? So, I mean, the current stats are something like almost 50% of American adults have prediabetes or diabetes, I think. That's ridiculous. That's a ridiculous number. And a lot of them don't even know it. And in our population, that percentage is probably even higher. And to have people being like, well, I'm not going to eat rice, I'm not going to eat beans, I'm just going to eat, you know, the alternatives to that.
Cutting out all carbs is a popular thought process right now.
Yeah. And so to give them that freedom to come back to their foods, you know, and we've known since I think I saw a paper from 1935, Rabinowitz, I think, is the lead author on that paper. It's a Canadian medical journal that showed that high carb, low calorie diets improve insulin sensitivity. But yet we teach people the opposite as a healthcare community, right? Or even as social, you know, our society. That's what we tell people. And yet people don't get better, right? So anyway, sorry, the food part. I told you the food part's my favorite part, right? And then we always include a period of time where we lead the group in some muscle movement. So light weights, some aerobic stuff, and incorporating even some dance into it, right? Because studies show that health changes occur best when it is enjoyable, right? And particularly with movement and food. So we make this fun, and people keep coming back and they say, how do we keep this available to our community and our neighborhood. So that's the goal, to keep growing this and to keep bringing people that hope and healing.
Yeah. Number one, Daniel, is I'm very happy you're here. That was nothing short of, I don't even think inspirational is a big enough word to describe what you just said. And I could feel it, through the screen. And as much as I would rather connect in person, I'm sure a lot of us having gone through COVID, just really miss that in-person connection and how, humans in general are just wired to be with others. How I can actually still feel that through the screen, right?
Mm.
And there's a lot of different things that resonated with me. There's, like you said, off camera, there's, we can spend a lot of time talking about this. But number one is I'm so glad that, I'm sorry that you had to go through that journey. I think that kind of journey from a health and medical point of view is probably above average more than what most would go through, right? And there could have been so many different obstacles, challenges, barriers. You said you went through depression. There's so many different points along that journey where you could have just stopped, went the opposite direction, right? Maybe not even practice medicine. And to be able to get through that, have a different kind of motivation, not just for your own personal health, but also setting in mind the original mission of why you did this, right? And being able to do it differently and allowing others to be open-minded, allowing others to explore. And the reason why is because you've opened up that space for them. You've allowed them to think differently, right? Because commonly, most doctor offices are 10, 15 minutes, if you're lucky. Most of the time, it's talking about medication management. How do we, get the next referral, right? And then continuously staring at a screen and writing on a script pad, and then off you go, right? But you've been able to take your journey and be able to display it, right? Just like how colorful and how diverse, and adding that that extra reminder, that spice, the spice of life, right? That zest, that gusto, right? To be able to showcase that, and a beautiful example of how, yes, we can doctor, which for many of us, and I've said this on the show many times, is, if you look at the Latin root of, doctor or doctore, it's, to educate and to teach, where you've, able to translate that and transform it into an open arena for learning and curiosity, right? But in this context, it's how can I empower and put the onus onto the patients and onto ourselves to say, hey, I have the choices, I have the responsibility, I have the duty. And COVID reminded me that no matter what we say or do, we're interconnected and interdependent on everyone else. And my decisions and what I do, even though I believe it's just for myself, is actually connected to everyone else. And so it's very important that I make solid, healthful decisions for myself, because it does affect everyone else, like you said, right? Because if I like this food and my children like it, well, guess what? It affects my children's health. So it's all about creating that ripple effect. And I applaud you, number one. I think you're doing great work. I hope this, and, I hope you get a chance to display this elsewhere for others to be able to be inspired, but also say like, hey, we can do this. We can look at medicine differently, and we can rebuild it from the ground up, and be able to help our patients front and center. So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's both giving people that power, right? That agency, that freedom to be able to make these decisions, but also to help break down those systems and obstacles that prevent them from reaching their health goals, right? Helping people to understand and not just parrot what people are telling them, right?
yes.
So many patients, even as we try to figure out what's your motivation for coming to the class, even people are often saying, well, I want to eat healthier, and I want to exercise more, right? Nothing wrong with that. But what does that look like, right, for each individual? How do we help at a systemic level, the context of an individual level? And I think that's exactly what you're saying. You want to be inspiring and helpful and equipping at the level that will actually translate to the homes and the tables in which the families are sharing these foods.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's way beyond, the virtual. You could YouTube, you could, do all this stuff online and virtually. And what I love about cooking and culinary medicine is it really is a 5 sense game, right? You really have to utilize all 5 senses. And this is how we connect. And this is how we reinforce learning, right? And through my journey, I had to learn between myself and professionally. There's people that learn so differently, right? And so when you're teaching in this space, you get to understand how people absorb and implement, right? It's not just about the knowledge, it's the wisdom, right? The wisdom is the application of knowledge, right? And so with food as medicine and eating for our health and cooking for our health, we have to utilize all 5 senses. So this is one of my favorite ways, as you have also shared, it's one of your favorite ways as well.
Hey guys, don't forget there's a part 2 to this. Stay tuned. Hey guys, we hope you enjoy that episode. If you like that, please like, comment, and subscribe. And please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, and anywhere that you listen to your podcasts. And if you felt that this was a benefit for someone else, please let them know. And also remember that the first 5 seasons, 150 episodes, now can be seen and heard on our new The Chef Doc app. And don't forget to give us a 5-star rating, and we greatly appreciate it. And we'll see you on the next one.